These slides are going to be available from XPRIM, so I am going to go quite quickly through them. But just to sort of highlight some of the changes in the air, some of the sort of more recent developments in the international reinsurance capacity. I hope I'm going to be able to utilize this thing, not get it wrong. Do I press the green button, do you know? No. There we go. How do we get here? Okay. One of the interesting things here is that there's been a 3 times increase in the capital, and yet the solvency margin has also increased. In other words, the reinsurance supply has grown much faster than demand, and I think we all know that, and we're all seeing the result. However, one thing that has surprised many, even though we know that there is global warming, or we think we know there's global warming, the number of insured losses has not really increased. But that is say insured losses, and I think one has to bear in mind that a lot of the losses are just happening in places which aren't predominantly insured. There is a slide later on which perhaps shows the number of events generally, which is increasing. But the other thing, of course, is that the meteorological element is always quite substantial and continuing to grow. Okay, so this is the actual events as opposed to the insured events. Again, I think this is quite interesting. It shows obviously an increase in the number of events, but also the color coding shows where that increase is happening, and that again is, hydrological and meteorological events are the growing part of the number of events. Again, I don't think that is any surprise to people, but it's quite interesting to see it in terms of the numbers over the years since 1980. Again, if anyone, when they can look at this in their own time, if they have any questions, they can always email me, and we can always sort of try and give an answer to any questions. Again, some of the most costly weather-related events. The one thing that's always quite interesting there is, if you look at the country, there's nothing from Europe there. And of course, this means that a lot of insurance companies in Central and Eastern Europe and elsewhere say, why should I be involved or suffer from any rating changes that are occurring because of events in other parts of the world. As it happens, even with all the weather-related events, there is a oversupply of reinsurance, so that argument doesn't have to be used so often. So this is a sort of a graph that's been concocted from some Swiss Re information and JLT Re information, which shows the gap between the insured losses and the total losses. And it shows a widening of the gap, which is not good. Now, I'm not making any value judgments here, but there is quite clearly, and this has been seen, since 9/11 there was a massive increase in the risk-adjusted global property cat prices, and it's been coming down, but it is not back to the level that it was in 1992, and I mean risk-adjusted. Now, does that mean it's going to continue to fall, or will there be some form of stabilization of reinsurance prices? people are taking advantage of a more commensurate pricing environment. These are actually American programs, but obviously when the price of reinsurance is coming down, which it is, then people should take the opportunity to buy more. But the problem for many reinsurers is at the same time cession rates are reducing. And that means that there is more hunger for new opportunities. And again, Romania does provide some diversification for reinsurers on a global basis. Again, there's been significant merger and acquisition activity over the last few years, and especially in 14 and 15. And it actually, as it says at the bottom, as a percentage of the dedicated reinsurance capital, it's 8%. Now, in terms of what's going to happen in the future, and we've already been told not to try and predict the future by no lesser scientist than Niels Bohr. What is interesting is that there does seem to be a resistance from continued reduction of reinsurance pricing. So that's not a hardening of the market, but perhaps it's a hardening of the softening of the market. But of course, we will see much more in the next few months. One of the programs that is renewed always very early is the COVER program in France, and that's already quite a substantial reduction still of, I think, 12%. But I think there is reasonable grounds to think that it is starting to reduce in terms of the speed or deceleration of the reduction in rates. Well, again, I think this is self-explanatory, and again, one can see elements of the Swiss Re bar chart there. How vulnerable are you to the next mega cat in reality? This, of course, the million-dollar question, or maybe the billion-dollar question. But in this current reinsurance market, I think that one should always, notwithstanding what one's required under Solvency II to buy, which I believe is a 1 in 200 year event, not 1 in 250, but I think one should be very prudent in terms of what can happen next. And that's all I want to say, really.